ng karamihan. Tinatanong nila, bakit kakaiba ang buhay niya't pagkasa'y nakamtan? Isang bagong likha ang tumilaw at tumanglaw sa kadiliman. Umaawit siya, papuri kay Jesus, si Kristo ang pinagli.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, I worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing His song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing till the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, I worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship Your holy name. You're rich in love and You're slow to anger. Your name is great and Your heart is kind. For all Your goodness, I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, I worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end was near and my time has come, still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, I worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship Your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, I worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship Your holy name. Yes, I will worship Your holy name. Lord, I worship Your holy name.
Ephesians chapter 4. Verse 31. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as what? As God in Christ forgave you. And then we're going to the book of Hebrews. I believe it's chapter 12. verse 15. Are you there? See to it that no one fails rather to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness spring up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. May the Lord bless the reading and the application of His word. Please be seated. When I was growing up, my aunts and my uncle, especially my mom, would tell me, there's only one thing you cannot change, and that is you cannot change your face, but the rest you can change. I think what they were saying was that I can truly change my behavior. I can't change my face, the look of my face, but I certainly can change my behavior. But in my observation over the last couple of years, biblically speaking, I found out that it is easier to change your face than to change your behavior. I mean, my daughter works for Max. She is a professional makeup artist, and she changes her face every day. There are days when she looks like Cinderella, and there are days when she looks like a witch. You know what I mean? I mean, she puts that black lipstick. And Instagram, I check her Instagram, and there are days she looks like an Asian. Sometimes she looks like a Mexican. Sometimes a combination of Filipino and Mexican. But God did not command us to change our faces, but He did command us to change our behavior. He says, get rid of all bitterness. Obviously, He was commanding the book of Ephesians or the church of Ephesus, and He is also commanding FICF to change his behavior or her behavior. And certainly we can do it because we are Christians. Amen? I mean, we can do all things through Christ who is our strength. We have the power of God, the power that created the heavens and the earth, as I mentioned a million times before, the power that raised Jesus from the dead. And bitterness comes because maybe there are some things that were said in the past that's still fresh in our hearts. Maybe it's about jealousy. You know, things happened in the past and now we're bitter because of it. Maybe because of neglect. Maybe because of discrimination. And we can no longer harbor bitterness because it is not good for us. And God says, get rid of all bitterness. How do you cut down a tree? Do you just cut the branches? Do you just cut down the trunk? No. In order to completely remove a tree, you need to do the dirty work. You need to get down on your knees and get to the roots and cut the roots out. If you don't cut the roots out, you know what would happen to that tree? It will grow again. If it's a fruit-bearing tree, the leaves will come back and eventually the fruit will come back again. Now, if we want to get rid of malice and anger, slander in our life, hatred, wrath, we need to cut the root of bitterness. And some people believe they have the right to be bitter. They believe that it's all right for them to be bitter because someone or some people have done them wrong. That is the reason why bitterness is so devastating, is because it gives means to be mean to people. They think they have the right to be mean because some things have been said in the past that really hurt them. I mean, if I owe you $25,000 and I don't want to pay you back, don't you have the right to be bitter towards me? I mean, if I slandered your name over and over again, don't you feel that you have the right to be bitter towards me? Yes, we say yes. That's the reason why bitterness is so devastating, because it gives us the privilege. We think we have the privilege to be cold and short-tempered to that person. And God says, I'm commanding each and every one of my children to get rid of all bitterness. Someone says, bitterness nurtures itself. Through its self-appointed privilege. You know, that's the reason why people can be so bitter for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20, because they have found a way. They have found a way to remove that guilt in their conscience. They have found a way to shortcut the protection of their conscience. They say, well, he did it to me 5 years ago. He did it to me 10 years ago. Don't I have the right to be bitter? Of course I do. If a person has not found a way by which he could short-circuit the protection from that conscience, that person will stop being bitter. As long as that event still fresh in the heart of that person, he feels that he has the right to be mean, and he has the right to enjoy being mean. The conscience stopped doing that. Stop doing it. But somehow the person had found ways by which he could bypass the guilt of the conscience. So we just keep on being bitter towards those people. And those people, they're enjoying life. They're not even thinking about us, but we wake up being bitter. We sleep being bitter. We're bitter throughout the day. It's like drinking alcohol. When we drink alcohol, those nerve connectors, they become dull. And as a result, we do a lot of stupid things. I mean, a person could actually go out naked. I mean, in public. Or even urinate in public places. Or even drive 100 miles an hour. You see, bitterness tricks the person. He fools the person by tricking the conscience. Again, as long as the person dwells on what happened, he feels that he is free from the protection of his conscience. Bitterness is a soul drug. It makes us do evil things when we don't normally do. Reminds me of that person whose marriage was ruined and his relationship with his children because of bitterness. So he goes around with a loaded gun in his car, that maybe he'll have the nerve someday just blow himself up. And so God says, you need to get rid of all bitterness. But let me tell you, many are not listening to this command. God. God says you can really disable this. You can really disable it. But many are not listening. And the reason being is because as long as the person is bitter, he feels that he has the upper hand. As long as he feels that person has wronged him or wronged her, he feels that he has a slight advantage over that person. As long as I don't forgive you, I am in control. The saddest part of it is this. Many of these people feel that God has appointed them to carry out this vindictive attitude. That God has given them the privilege to punish people. But in reality, they're wrong. You know, when this happens in marriage, that oneness is lost. There are two people, two opponents. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 15 says, "Make sure that everyone has kindness from God, so that bitterness doesn't take root and grow up to cause trouble that corrupts many of you." The text implies that this person has received grace from God, but he doesn't want to give grace to other people. God has forgiven him, and he accepted forgiveness, but he is unwilling to forgive others. In Matthew chapter 6 verses 14 and 15 it says, "If you forgive people, the Father will forgive you, but if you do not forgive others, the Father will not forgive you as well." I mean, if there is one person who should really hold bitterness against us, should be God. I mean, look at the things that we're doing towards him, and yet he has forgiven us. He says, "I want you to set people free, just like I have set you free." Don't be bitter to others, just like I'm not bitter towards you. Remember Matthew chapter 18, verses 23 through 35? If you have your Bible, just follow me. And it's about this person who received grace from God and yet unwilling to give grace to others. Matthew chapter 18 verses 23 through 35, it says, "For this reason the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a certain king who is to settle accounts with his slaves. When he had begun to settle them, there was brought to him one who owed him 10,000 talents. But since he did not have the means to repay, his Lord commanded him to be sold, along with his wife and children and all that he had, and repayment to be made. The slave therefore, falling down, prostrated himself before him, saying, 'Have patience with me, and I will repay you everything.' And the Lord of that slave felt compassion and released him and forgave him the debt. But that slave went out and found one of his fellow slaves who owed him 100 denarii, and he seized him and began to choke him, saying, 'Pay back what you owe.' So his fellow slave fell down, began to entreat him, saying, 'Have patience with me, and I will repay you.' He was unwilling, however, but went and threw him in prison until he should pay back what was owed. So when his fellow slaves saw what had happened, they were deeply grieved and came reported to their lord all that had happened. Then summoning him, his Lord said to him, "You wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt because you entreated me. Should you not also have mercy on your fellow slave, as I have mercy on you?" And his Lord, moved with anger, handed him over to the torturers until he should repay all that was owed him. So shall my heavenly Father also do to you, if each of you does not forgive his brother from your heart. So this person was caught in the net of bitterness, and he felt that he had the right to be vindictive. He has received forgiveness from the king, but he was unwilling to forgive the other person, and God was angry. He cannot tolerate it. He says, "You're going to suffer the consequences of what you've done. You tortured him, and I will so throw you to your torturers." Question is, would he lose his salvation? Well, I hope so. He says, you need to pay back $10 million. That's the equivalent of what he owes you today. Pay the 10 million and then I will release you. And we know he doesn't have $10 million and we don't have $10 million. I mean, it's so much easier to just forgive. I'm going to release you from your debt. It's like, God, you release me from my debt. Again, it says in Matthew chapter 12, verse 15, make sure that everyone has kindness from God, so that bitterness doesn't take root and grow up to cause trouble that corrupts many of you. God says, make sure that bitterness doesn't cling to your soul. Make sure that they don't grow within you. You know, if a plant doesn't have roots, that plant's not going to grow. But if that plant has roots, it will definitely going to grow. As I said earlier, if it's a fruit-bearing tree, it will have leaves and eventually going to have fruits. If we continue to be bitter, then the result would be anger, clamor, hatred, dissension, you name it. And the bigger the bitterness, the bigger the manifestation. Look what happened in Las Vegas. You know how that person killed those people? It was because of that bitterness. The bitterness has gone so big and the manifestation was that. And we can understand what's happening in our schools today. It's because of bitterness. The bitterness has become like a volcano. Now it has erupted and messed up all kinds of people. Bitterness is very devastating. It could lead to murder. It could lead to divorces. It could lead into suing people, causing thousands and thousands of dollars. Make sure that everyone has kindness from God, so that bitterness doesn't take root and grow up to cause trouble that corrupts many of you. If a person continues to become bitter, that person eventually going to get defiled. And when he's defiled, he would spread that defilement all over his family and the people that he works with. Just like cancer. If it's not detected and controlled, that thing is going to spread all over his or her body. So then there'll be clamor, raging words, then there'll be malice, then there'll be anger, wrath. And it all begins with bitterness. That's the root of it all. And those who are victims of this, they become bitter themselves eventually. You know, when you play with mud, eventually you're gonna get muddy. If you continue to harbor hatred, pretty soon it's gonna mess you up. Why not just release the person? Why do people get married? Why do people get into a relationship? It is for them to enjoy that relationship, there be happiness among those people. But when they invite bitterness to come in, it turns that sorrow, that turns that joy to sorrow. Again, will it be easier to just say, hey, let me just forgive you. It's like God has forgiven me. A couple of years ago, I tried to remove a tree in my backyard. It's not because of the leaves that I have to sweep every day, but I discovered that the roots actually have begun to cling onto the sewer pipes and other pipes. So I got these two guys to help me out. It was easy to just, cutting the leaves and then cutting the trunk. But I discovered in order to kill this tree, to remove this tree, I need to cut the roots. And it wasn't so easy. We had to widen the space so that we could get to the roots. And we worked on it for days. It was very, very difficult. And finally, we decided to get some substance, something that is toxic, so just kill the trunk and the roots, so we can't get to all of them. And so we cut it, and it's still protruding about maybe 5-6 inches from the ground. So I covered it with a box, making sure that it doesn't get any sunlight. But I was so sure if I completely removed the tree. And I called the experts. They would have done it overnight. There's nothing impossible to God. God can really do it. All you need to say is, Lord, from now on, I don't want to harbor bitterness. Please help me. He'll do it for you. Remember, I've been telling us that we need to be gracious to all people. We make a point to be gracious, we make a point to be kind to people. It really changes you tremendously. It revolutionizes your Christian life, your walk with the Lord. It doesn't matter who He is or what He has done. Today I'm going to be gracious to you. I'm going to be kind with my words, my attitude. If there's something I can do for you, I'll do it. I'll be gracious to you, no matter what you've done in the past. And again, bitterness could start at any moment. Maybe it's just a word that is uttered. That maybe, what's the matter with you? Maybe the tone and the facial expression is enough for that person to harbor that for many, many years. I learned when I was taking cognitive behavioral therapy that we need to go back and talk about those things that have been said. That sort of kind of dictate our core beliefs today. And let me tell you, you cannot stay where you are. You cannot stay bitter and be okay. The last 2 weeks have been very difficult for me. I was called to officiate a wedding in Walnut Grove, and I had 2 weeks to get myself prepared, my body, because I was sort of kind of sick. So I went to see my doctor. Actually, it was only 3 times. I said, I want to make sure that I'm okay on this day. So he gave me an antibiotic and did something for my cold. But still, I was still dizzy, and we were in this hotel. Nico says, get up and dress up. I said, can I have another 5 minutes? I mean, that kind of feeling, And I'm going to have to do this wedding under the heat of the sun for 30 minutes, and I'm going to have to speak for at least 30 minutes. And at this time, I was coughing, and I was coughing every other minute. How could I do it? I tried to find substitute. I tried sort of kind of checking here and cooking something for the hospital. And right away they say, "Ah, no, we're not open." And Jericho says, "Oh, my license only in the way." And so I had to do it. On the way there, it was a 35-mile zone, and hardly any people on this highway. And there was this guy just kept on blowing his horn, and I wasn't feeling that well. And I said, I really felt bitter toward this guy. And he just kept on blowing and blowing, and I couldn't find a space where I could swing to the right and let him pass by, and he was annoying me. He was tailgating me, and finally I found a little space there. I moved, and he passed by and gave me a finger. And I said to myself, well, maybe there's something wrong with his children, maybe his son or maybe his daughter that he needs to get home. And that's the reason why he was acting that way. I can't stay there and be bitter. I gotta find a way to relieve myself. I said maybe he's in a hurry because his child is very sick, or maybe his wife is very sick. I need to think that way, or I can be bitter. And when I thought about that, I said, yeah, I'm okay. And I was bitter towards God. I said, Lord, I prayed that I'll be okay for the next 2 weeks, but you did not answer my prayer. And so I am faced at this particular day with this responsibility which I cannot do. And I said, I'm bitter towards you. When I did the wedding, I didn't even call. I mean, for 30 minutes I was alone. And God says, I want you to be patient during affliction. I will deliver you. I will provide for you. And let me tell you, I did that wedding and really enjoyed it. But as soon as I gave the benediction, then I started coughing. You cannot stay where you are. You need to do something in order to get rid of that bitterness. Again, let me read it to you. Make sure that everyone has kindness from God, so that bitterness doesn't take root and grow up to cause trouble that corrupts many of you. From now on, just say to God, Lord, from now on, I don't want to harbor bitterness. Give me the strength so that I can overcome this, and God will give you enough grace to be able to stop that attitude towards people. Next week I'm going to talk about forgiving each other liberally. May God bless you.